Her eyes shimmered with a kind of joy as she slid the engagement ring onto her finger. It felt like the beginning of a beautiful new chapter, a future filled with shared dreams. We began planning our lives together, searching for the perfect home, imagining the children we'd raise, building a future side by side. Everything seemed perfect. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, something shifted. At first, it was subtle, a change in the way she acted. She grew distant, spending long hours on her phone, offering weak excuses for late-night outings, and when I gently asked about it, she snapped. Her defensiveness surprised me. I had expected reassurance, but instead I was met with anger. The next day, I stumbled upon the truth, and it shattered everything I had believed. I discovered explicit messages between her and a man from her gym. They had been sneaking around behind my back for weeks. When I confronted her, I braced myself for the guilt, the regret, perhaps even a tearful apology. But that never came. Instead, she coldly smiled and told me that it was a test of my love. She painted her betrayal as a challenge, a test that I had failed because I couldn't forgive her instantly. My mind reeled. It was staggering, the audacity with which she twisted everything, turning her infidelity into my fault. I didn't waste time. I told her that the wedding was off and gave her 1 hour to leave. Her reaction was explosive. She accused me of being ungrateful, of not understanding the sacrifices she had made. But no amount of anger or emotional manipulation could undo what she had done. She tried everything, tears, pleas, but I was resolute. She was no longer the woman I thought I knew. I calmly repeated myself and told her I would call the police if she didn't leave. Fuming, she stormed out, hastily packing a bag. I locked the door behind her, a sense of finality settling over me. But she wasn't done. The following day I was bombarded with messages. One moment full of tearful apologies, the next filled with cruel insults. "You're my soulmate," one message read. Then another, "No one will ever want you." She even threatened me. "Push me and you'll regret it." I didn't respond. I was done. But she continued. She started showing up at my workplace, lurking in the parking lot, demanding to talk. I refused. Mutual friends reached out, urging me to give her another chance. I stood firm. I wouldn't let myself be manipulated into staying in a toxic relationship. Then she crossed a line I hadn't expected. One evening, I returned home to find her sitting on my front steps, arms folded, a look of pure malice on her face. "We need to talk," she said coldly. "You can't ignore me. We belong together. You failed my test. You're weak." I remained calm, my voice steady. "Leave now or I'm calling the police." Her response was chilling. "This is my house too." But it wasn't. It was my home, the sole owner of the property was me. She had no legal right, no claim, no contract. Yet she acted as though she had a rightful share, as if the broken engagement entitled her to everything. The truth was, she had created a delusion and I was finally free of it. I reached out to a lawyer who confirmed there was nothing, no legal connection, no common law marriage, no joint ownership, that could tie her to my property. My lawyer advised me to begin documenting every interaction, every message, and every confrontation. If things escalated further, I would have grounds for a restraining order. Escalate they did. She began sending me long, angry texts, accusing me of failing her, of being a coward. One message stood out, sending a cold shiver down my spine. "You owe me another chance after everything I invested in us. If you don't let me come back, I'll tell everyone you abused me." I felt a knot form in my stomach. She was willing to destroy my reputation out of sheer spite. I didn't reply. Instead, I kept everything, her messages, the threat, and the evidence of her attempts to ruin me, and met with my lawyer again. He reassured me that this could be considered both blackmail and defamation. If she followed through with her threat, we had a solid case for legal action. He also advised me to apply for a protective order. A few days later, I came home to find the lock on my front door scratched deep, as if someone had tried to force it open. Nothing had been stolen, but the violation was clear. I wasted no time installing security cameras. A few nights later, those cameras captured her sneaking around my porch, peeking through the windows. I contacted the police immediately. They filed a report and encouraged me to pursue a restraining order. They issued her a warning. If she returned, she would be arrested for trespassing. The next step was inevitable. Her fury boiled over. She flooded my phone with aggressive messages, calling me a coward and vowing that I would regret involving the police. That was the moment I knew I had to take action. I compiled everything, texts, video footage, police reports, and filed for a restraining order. The judge granted a temporary order, prohibiting her from coming near me, my workplace, or my home. I hoped that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. She switched tactics. This time, she anonymously contacted my supervisor, accusing me of being mentally unstable, suggesting that my personal issues were affecting my work. My boss, who had known me for years, called me into his office. He showed me the email and it was clear who had sent it. Thankfully, he trusted me completely. I explained the situation and he was understanding, though he warned me to remain cautious. But her attempts to manipulate didn't stop there. She spread malicious rumors about me, claiming I had abandoned her after a fictitious pregnancy and that I had stolen from her. Some friends confronted me, concerned. But after I showed them the disturbing text she had sent, they quickly realized the truth and apologized for ever doubting me. Her behavior grew more erratic. She tried to guilt-trip me over the money lost from our canceled wedding, money that could never be recovered. She even demanded compensation for the emotional distress and time she claimed I had wasted. The irony of it all was bitter. The same person who had lied, threatened, and harassed me was now demanding payment for the emotional damage she caused. Even with the restraining order in place, she didn't stop. She began showing up at places she knew I frequented, like the gym. One night, I saw her standing by my car, arms tightly crossed beneath the harsh streetlight. "You really think a piece of paper can stop me?" she sneered. "This isn't finished." Her relentless pursuit of manipulation and revenge had only one purpose: to ruin me. But I was done. I would no longer allow myself to be tangled in her web of deceit. Her twisted game had ended. I didn't respond. Instead, I calmly took out my phone and started recording. As soon as she saw what I was doing, she lunged forward, trying to snatch the phone from my hand. "You're pathetic," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. But then something shifted. Her voice cracked with desperation, a glimpse of the vulnerability I hadn't seen before. "Just take me back. I'll drop everything I've said," she pleaded, her words trembling with panic. It was clear she hadn't acted on her threats yet, but the possibility still loomed. I remained composed, my voice unwavering as I told her, "You're violating the restraining order." Her face twisted in fury, and she muttered curses under her breath before fleeing the scene just as the police were about to arrive. I saved the footage, knowing it could be crucial later. The following day, I consulted my lawyer, who advised filing a motion for contempt of court because of the violation. He also warned that if she followed through on any false reports, we would be prepared to fight back. We began working to have the restraining order strengthened, possibly even extended into a permanent injunction. The process was slow, but for the first time things were starting to turn in my favor. That was until one day when I received a call from an unfamiliar number. It was her mother, her voice sharp and laced with bitterness. "You're ruining my daughter's life," she snapped. "She made one mistake and you're blowing it out of proportion. She deserves another chance." The absurdity of her statement nearly made me laugh. A mistake? Cheating and months of deliberate harassment were not mistakes. They were choices, harmful, calculated choices. I refused to engage in her twisted narrative. Instead, I said as calmly as I could, "Your daughter needs serious help and she must stay away from me." This only fueled her mother's anger. "I'll sue you for emotional distress," she threatened. I knew it was an empty threat. There was no case to be made. Let them try, I thought. Not long after, I started noticing strange activity on my credit card, expensive electronics sent to an address I didn't recognize. I acted quickly, canceling the card, alerting the bank, and opening a fraud investigation. It didn't take long for the bank to trace the transactions back to a relative of hers. That was the final straw. I gathered all the evidence, screenshots of the transactions, correspondence with the bank, and everything I could find, and handed it over to the police. Identity theft was a serious crime, and the officer assigned to my case assured me that they would question her relative, and if the connection held, charges would be pressed. Meanwhile, the court date for her restraining order violation arrived. She claimed it was a coincidence that she was in the gym parking lot at the same time I had been, but I had the evidence. I presented the video footage that showed otherwise, her lurking in the parking lot, issuing clear threats. The judge wasn't fooled. Not only was the restraining order upheld, but it was made even more restrictive. The judge's words were firm. Absolutely no contact in any form. Her eyes burned with rage as she glared at me across the courtroom, but she said nothing. A week later, the police finished their investigation into the fraudulent activity. The purchases were definitively linked to her, and she was charged with misdemeanor fraud. That's when the panic set in. She started sending me desperate emails from a new account, begging me not to testify and promising to back off if I agreed. I forwarded every message to my lawyer and the police. Her attempts to manipulate only deepened her legal troubles. Desperation drove her to make one final reckless move. She showed up at my workplace, storming through the lobby, screaming accusations and blaming me for ruining her life. Security detained her until the police arrived. This time there was no escaping the consequences. With multiple violations, harassment, fraud, and trespassing added to her record, the district attorney's office stepped in. They offered her a plea deal: plead guilty, accept penalties, and agree to a permanent no-contact order. Her lawyer, likely exhausted by her behavior, urged her to accept the deal. At the final hearing, I sat beside my attorney, watching the last chapter of this twisted story unfold. She looked nothing like the person I once knew. Disheveled, anxious, and broken, she sat there, her face pale and void of defiance. The district attorney listed everything: harassment, fraud, evidence of threats, and court order violations. The judge addressed her firmly, his voice cutting through the courtroom. "Your behavior has been reckless and dangerous," he said, his tone grave. "You're lucky your actions caused emotional harm, not physical injury. Do you understand how serious this is?" She nodded, silent, defeated. The sentence was handed down: probation, mandatory counseling, restitution for the fraud, and a lifelong no-contact order. The judge's words were final: any future infractions will lead directly to jail time. In that moment, I saw the weight of her actions settle on her. She had lost everything, not just a relationship but her dignity, her freedom, and any shred of self-respect she once had. As I stepped out of the courthouse, I was flooded with a strange mixture of relief and disgust. Her sense of entitlement had spiraled into criminality, all because she refused to take responsibility for what she had done. What she had called a test was nothing more than manipulation, a deliberate attempt to control and break me. She had tried every tactic: lies, threats, even blackmail, but it all came crashing down in the end. I upgraded my home security, changed the locks, and began the slow, painful process of rebuilding my life. Some mutual friends reached out, expressing guilt for believing her lies. Others remained silent. But at that point I didn't care. I had learned a hard lesson about trust and how love, when misplaced, can turn toxic. Legally I was protected. She couldn't come near me or contact me without risking jail time. Financially, I had taken some losses, especially from the wedding that never happened, but that was a small price to pay for peace. Emotionally, I was scarred, but I was stronger and wiser. I knew that eventually I would move on and find someone better, someone who deserved me. Watching her break under the judge's words gave me the closure I needed. She had done more than betray love. She had trampled on my dignity, underestimated my strength, and pushed too far. Now she would have to live with the consequences of her actions. As for me, this painful chapter was finally over.